According to CNBC, CFPB employees say that Musk and the agency's Trump-appointed leaders plan to fire nearly all 1,700 employees. This comes as members of the Senate Banking Committee grilled Trump's pick to lead the CFPB on Thursday. And during that very hearing, the agency dropped 4 lawsuits against firms accused of ripping off millions of Americans. The cases were originally filed under former director Rohit Chopra. And Rohit Chopra joins us now.
You up?
Hi, friends.
How's it going?
How's it going for you?
Did the president fire you?
He did. And here's what we've seen actually in the past few weeks. We've seen the CFPB hand out a series of corporate pardons to some of the biggest companies that were in the courtrooms where there was, in many cases, damning evidence that they had cheated consumers. Big mortgage companies, and including Capital One, which we accused of cheating people out of $2 billion in interest that they withheld. So we don't know how these pardons are being handed out.
You're calling them pardons, right? They're not calling them pardons. That's like your framework.
Well, they're going to a courtroom, pulling the case out and saying that it's never going to be filed again.
Right.
Welcome back to William on Watch. As promised in an earlier episode, today we're going to discuss an agency that doesn't usually make headlines, but it is right now due to its dismantling by DOGE. I'm talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. This action by Trump and DOGE could very possibly affect your wallet, your credit score, your loans, and almost certainly your protections as a consumer. So, Republicans gain positions of power by manipulating paycheck voters who later become victims of their own votes, often without realizing it. But paycheck people voting for Republicans is rather like turkeys voting for Thanksgiving. And the actions being taken by the Trump administration against the CFPB represent an excellent example of that. So here's the deal. The CFPB was created after the 2008 financial meltdown, when banks collapsed and people lost their homes and Wall Street walked away with billions in bailouts, which we all paid for. And the chart of my 401k began looking like a stairway to starvation. But anyway, that crisis did expose some major problems, one of which was that there was no single agency solely responsible for protecting consumers from abusive financial practices. The agency was the brainchild of Elizabeth Warren, who was at that time a Harvard law professor. It came to life in the Dodd-Frank legislation to act as a watchdog, a way to protect consumers like you and me from shady lenders and abusive debt collectors and predatory financial practices. So its mission was to shield us from the worst instincts and corrupt practices of financial institutions. Now, I remember being pretty excited when I first heard about the CFPB because finally there was going to be somebody to hear my complaints when I got scammed. Prior to the CFPB, there really was nowhere to turn. I recently read an op-ed penned by a conservative who claimed that the CFPB was unnecessary because attorneys provide legal remedies for consumers. But no, they don't. I mean, good luck getting an attorney fired up about getting back your wrongly applied $35 overdraft fee. That's not going to happen. What was possible, though, was to write a note to the CFPB to let them know what that bank was up to. And if they heard from enough consumers about that bank, the bank would then hear from the CFPB. So it was sort of like Yelp reviews, but with subpoenas. Well, today, things are changing, and not in a good way. Since coming to power, the Trump administration has been quietly destroying the CFPB, planning to downsize it from about 1,700 employees, as you just heard, to the statutorily mandated minimum of 5. 5. That's not an agency, that's a Wednesday night card game. Employees were reportedly told to stop all work and not open any new investigations.
Nobody is helped by shutting down the agency except big banks, con men, and rip-off artists. Oh, and billionaires like Mr. Musk, who is trying to start a new X Money feature on his social media platform. By eliminating the CFPB, he would take the financial cop off the beat.
Now, instead of being a tough regulator, it's being described by the Trump administration as being pro-business. What happened to the consumer in Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? The CFPB, under its new leadership, has been actively dismissing lawsuits that were filed during the Biden years to hold credit bureaus and payday lenders and credit card companies and debt collectors all accountable. But yeah, you heard that right. These lawsuits haven't been lost. They've been dropped as a payback to Trump's corporate cronies. There's a link in the description to this partial list of dropped cases if you want more info on that. So there's no need to wonder who benefits from these changes, because, spoiler alert, it ain't you. You know, if you have to fight a bogus charge on your credit report, if you're taken in by some fabulous credit card deal or get into a too good to be true loan and then get billed for a whole bunch of hidden fees, sorry, now you lose and the grifter wins.
You know, it's not just X and Twitter. There's also Tesla. A lot of people borrow a lot of money to purchase Teslas, and when things go wrong with their loan, they go to the CFPB. Every day we were getting back about $4 million on average into people's pockets, and right now it's zero.
The CFPB was the agency standing between you and those practices. Since 2011, it has demanded and received over $20 billion in compensation for consumers. And funding for the agency was only about a quarter of that amount. That's like Shark Tank level return on investment. And now that wall of protection is being torn down, dollar by dollar, employee by employee. Sure, some state attorneys general and advocacy groups are pushing back by filing lawsuits and calling for oversight. And they're also warning that we're headed right back into the kind of deregulatory environment that led to the 2008 crash. But the Musk Mafia is wrecking agencies like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau nearly as fast as Trump can tell lies, and before courts can stop the damage. Yes, what they're doing is often illegal, which is the very reason for their speed and secrecy. Much of the dismantling of our government violates various employment laws and the Impoundment Control Act. So much of what they're doing will ultimately be deemed illegal by the courts, but too late. The damage will have already been done. And that's their whole plan. Conservative media has convinced many in its audience that all regulations are bad for you and me, that they're strangling our country. And then they'll cite a couple of examples of what appear to be really stupid regulations to make their point, right? But in truth, the vast majority of regulations benefit us. Corporations don't like them because they restrain them from doing unethical things or require them to implement changes that add a little cost to their products but provide greater safety to consumers or workers. Company CEOs don't want the expensive regulations that seek to preserve the health of our society and our planet. And who really doesn't like regulations? Billionaires like Elon Musk and members of Trump's cabinet. And when everyday people parrot these conservative media talking points about regulations, they're demonstrating just how effective right-wing propaganda truly is. Yeah, of course, sometimes regulations do go too far, and those regulations should be looked at. They should be, modified or maybe even removed from the books entirely. Now take those dang gasoline jugs, the ones with the over-engineered spouts that somehow manage to get gasoline absolutely everywhere except into your lawnmower. They do the exact opposite of what the EPA regulations had intended. I hate those damn things. But those jugs truly are straight up dangerous, and it does make me wonder how those designs were ever approved. Now, that's a regulation that really needs to be revisited. But regulations such as those enforced by the CFPB generally do make our lives better.
And so where does this leave consumers now? Because I think consumers need to recognize a little outrageous indignation here because they're about to get stomped on.
This is the GOP doing what it does best, rewarding corporate donors and stomping on the rest. Maybe next election, MAGA voters will remember this. Or maybe we'll have to remind them. But at some point, average and lower income folks who have been voting for Republicans are going to realize that they're being played every day. And I mean played harder than a kazoo in a marching band. That culture war distractions are invented by the right to keep working people from noticing their empty wallets. And when their awakening begins, we need to be ready to welcome them, not with ridicule and self-satisfaction, but with facts, empathy, and maybe a couple of charts. As some of you know, I spent many years living in Alabama, maybe the reddest of all states, and I know that my friends and family and neighbors who all voted for Trump aren't bad people. Rather, they are deceived people, made angrier every day by conservative media. They simply take the distraction bait every time. But to ridicule them would only make them dig ideological slit trenches. To effect real and durable change, we're going to need independents and recovering Republicans on our side. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd like to know what you think about the destruction of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And if you're not happy about it, contact your representatives. I've included a link in the description to help you do just that. If you like this content, please take just a sec to tap the like and subscribe button and notifications. It will help other people find this channel. You are the sponsors of today's episode. Until next time, fair winds.